instead of being defined by the results that we're getting or defined by people's opinions of how we look, walk and talk, etc., is at the statesperson phase, we start defining ourselves by the legacy that we're leaving behind. Because the core driving question evolves to, what can I give? So our success is redefined at statesperson stage. Our success is defined by the value that we are being to somebody else. You wake up one day and you go, what's going on? And this is where a lot of people have a crisis point, where the things that they once valued have ceased to excite them.
Welcome to Leading to Profit. I'm your host, Kevin Bees, and I've dedicated my career to empowering business leaders like you with the leadership skills, performance psychology they need to build thriving businesses. Are you ready for immediately actionable strategies from world-class profit leaders? Let's dive in. This is Leading to Profit. Welcome to episode number 275 of Leading to Profit. Today we have Joe Pane. Now, I've known Joe over a decade, maybe a little bit longer, maybe more like 12 or 13 years ago. I got to see him present, and at the time I was very wowed by his expertise in human behavior. Now, he's a degree qualified in psychology and sociology. He's been working in the field since 2006, and his specialty is emotional fitness. He's the author of the best-selling book called Courage to Be You, A Guide to Mastering Uncertainty. And this book is a culmination of his last 19 years in delivering workshops and keynotes to a wide range of audiences and industries. Now, he's also known as the coach's coach, since he's trained more than 7,000 mindset coaches who work in the field today. So, Joe, I'm very excited to be with you today.
Thanks, Kevin. As I was saying earlier, I really appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
It's so good. Now, I've had the opportunity, I mentioned your book there in the bio, Courage to Be You, and maybe tell us a little bit about that. When you're taking 2 decades or more of your knowledge and experience and distilling it into an amazing resource like that, what is it? What is the key message? What are you kind of getting?
It is a combination of a couple of decades worth of stuff. The essence of the book is based on what I believe to be the single most important psychological relationship we could possibly have outside of our relationships with people, is the relationship that we have with uncertainty. And I think that if someone has a very poor relationship with uncertainty, it's going to really impact every other nook and cranny of their life, because uncertainty seems to be the precursory seed, the fundamental prerequisite to all growth. And as we know, whether we look at nature, the universe, the world, markets, economies, relationships, skill sets, no matter what we're looking at, everything's either, moving in one direction or another direction. It's either growing or dying, breathing out, breathing in, expanding or shrinking. And I figured that if I could write a book that could help transform one's relationship with uncertainty, so then they could fulfill their perpetual need for growth in a more sustainable fashion, it would mean that, we get to navigate the challenges that come with being in business or being in life or being in a marriage or whatever the situation is, that we can navigate those situations with more clarity and direction. The book is not intended to, the book doesn't actually, in my writings, I say very clearly, becoming emotionally fit doesn't mean that uncertainty becomes easier. It just means that you are equipped to navigate it properly. Just like, a mountain climber who doesn't have the right equipment is going to find it extremely difficult. But once they've got the right equipment, it doesn't mean that suddenly the mountain disappears. It's still going to have to be climbed.
I like that metaphor. It really unlocks it, because I guess what the opposite of uncertainty would be certainty, which is where we don't take any risks. We don't scale that mountain. We don't go and take on the things that we need to take on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think here in Australia specifically, because most of my work's been done here in Australia, is that I think that there's an unconscious addiction that people have to certainty. I think to some degree we all have it. The moment we go on holidays to a new town we've never been to before, the first thing we do is we start scoping the land. Where is everything? It's that is fulfilling our need for certainty, safety, comfort, all those sorts of things. And absolutely. And I think an addiction is one thing, that's a problem. But I think we all need to have a variety of ways of feeling comfortable and safe. So then, as you can appreciate from all the work that you've done with Tony Robbins there, is that, when we've got the base layer of certainty met, we can handle more of the unknown. We can more functionally work, I guess you could say, when it comes to dealing with challenges, problems, various flavors of uncertainty.
I love that. It's very well framed. And of course, we've all had that experience. There's things that we need to do and need to step into. And sometimes it's too uncertain, it's too scary. So it can be very easy for us to step back and not do the thing that we want to do. Help us link in the idea of the courage to be you, though, because how do we link this idea of uncertainty and being yourself?
Yeah, nice. So I think that when it comes to uncertainty, if you can think of a spectrum where we have uncertainty on a very minuscule level, so in the form of variety, going to work in a different way, taking a different street, that's uncertainty, but in a very microscopic sort of way. And then at the other end of the spectrum, blown full out, is you've got full-blown life crises where, you're nearly dying, or there's something that's come to an end that you hold really, really dear to you, whether it's the end of a career, end of a relationship, whatever it might be. Full-blown crisis is at the other end, and everything in between. To me, having the courage to be you sits somewhere between the middle and the extreme, like the crisis point, because I think, well, based on I'm 55 now, and and the reason why I'm telling you that is because based on my life experience so far, is that I found that it takes at least a couple of decades of living with responsibilities, whether it's financial responsibilities, relationship responsibilities, if you happen to be a parent like we are, parenting responsibilities. I think you have to live a couple of decades where you have to deal and navigate responsibilities in order to get to know yourself. And by getting to know yourself, and I say this in the book, there's a metaphor which I love in the book where I share that, you got to figure out whether you're born as a mini minor or a Formula One car or a four-wheel drive or a city SUV car, because you might be in a mini minor and you find yourself in a Grand Prix track and you're comparing yourself to these fast cars that you'll never be able to match. But they'll never be able to match the dexterity and the speed and the way that a Mini can navigate laneways in the city that a Formula One car simply cannot do. And I reckon it takes a couple of decades to figure out what kind of metaphorical car you are so you can be matched to the lay of the land that suits you and brings the best out of you. And courage to be you, I think it takes courage to do that, because you need to do that through relationship. You need to do that through experience. You need to do that through trying different things. You need to do that through your expression, through your career or through your business. And these vehicles of experience with awareness give us feedback on how we're doing. And the ultimate of courage to be you is discovering that everything that you've chased and everything that you've experienced and everything that you've become and everything that you've gathered and created is that the ultimate cosmic joke is that none of that is you anyway. So it's a fascinating journey. So in the book, I talk about, I'm a massive fan of Carl Jung and transpersonal psychology. He's the creator and founder of psychoanalytic psychology, and I adore the contribution he's made to the human behavioral knowledge. And something he talks about are the four identity stages and phases that we all go through in life, that every business goes through in life. He doesn't talk about business, but he talks about us as people. And that fourth and final phase of identity is the phase of spirit, the stage of spirit, where we realize that, life does actually continue on beyond the end of the body. Whether I'm talking to an atheist or whether I'm talking to a very religious person or a highly spiritual person, you name the spectrum of different extremes of beliefs, for what it's worth, we're all going to end up in the same place. It's just a matter of how.
It may be a bit of the conversation we could dig into today. And I guess if you're driving a Formula One car, you're not very good at taking the corners, you might end up in that spirit place sooner rather than later. Tell me about the other of those four phases that you mentioned, from Carl Jung. So we end up at spirit, but what are the stages that we go through? And is there a chance that maybe we're in our business right now and we need to progress from one of these phases to another?
Yeah, so these identity phases. So when I've taught the emotional fitness work I do, the identity piece, which I'm going to share with you now, is probably the single most important and most popular chunk of all of the frameworks that I've created under the emotional fitness formula, which is just my frameworks that I've created over the years. Because identity, whether it's the identity of a business, the identity of what a team wants to become, or the identity of you as a man, Kevin, me as a man, my wife as a woman, whatever our roles are that we play, is that these four phases are completely crucial to our awareness and to be aware of where we're at in the journey. And so what Carl Jung did was he spoke in archetypical language. And of course, an archetype is a labeling system for a group of patterns of behavior, of human behavior. So a family of patterns of human behavior can be labeled with one word to give us a bit of a flavor instantly of what we're talking about. The first stage of identity that he talks about is the athlete stage. And of course, again, it's an archetype, so it's not literally an athlete. But the athlete stage is where we're defined by our physicality and our material possessions. And so we grow a hypersensitivity to people's opinions on how we look, walk, talk, what they think of our car, our house, our shirt, our apartment, our whatever that we've bought. And this is typically in our late teens going into our 20s, deep into our 20s. And because the core driving question that exists at this level is, what do you think of me? What do you think of my house, my car, my whatever? And then as life demands more of us, as our responsibilities expand, organically, you move into the second stage and phase of identity, which is the stage of the warrior hunter. And this is where most of us spend a couple of decades at this stage, where we're building, because the core driving question here is, what can I get? Get the skills, get the experience, get the wisdom, get the qualification, get the results, get the girl, get the guy, get the house. It's a building phase. And it's a fun phase. It's you're climbing the mountain. You're doing your thing, and you're discovering that maybe you're on the right mountain, or maybe you're on the wrong mountain. Maybe you thought you were a mini, but you're a 4-wheel drive. It's all that self-discovery over those couple of decades. And then when we finally discover what kind of vehicle we are and what kind of land we belong to and where we need to be and all that kind of stuff, we start moving into the third phase of identity, which is getting into a different space completely. And that's what Jung described as the archetype of the statesperson. And this is where, instead of being defined by the results that we're getting or defined by people's opinions of how we look, walk, and talk, etc., is at the statesperson phase, we start defining ourselves by the legacy that we're leaving behind. Because the core driving question evolves to, what can I give? So our success is redefined at statesperson stage. Our success is defined by the value that we are being to somebody else. So a business goes through these stages as well. A business goes through the stage of athlete, which is the very beginning. So what do you think of the building, the systems, the process? It's a very self-focused stage of which we need to go through when we're starting a new career path or a new business, because this is how we're building the platform emotionally, energetically, systematically, process-wise, etc., to start building results on. Because if we don't have the right systems, processes, environment, because the athlete stage, remember, is all about materialism. So we've got to have the right materials in place. And then we can layer on top of that, build results, which is the warrior stage. And so then the team becomes defined by the results that they're getting. Now, as you start getting team members or leaders or business owners or individuals, well, we've got some runs on the board and we've had some wins, we've had our losses, and we're just moving along. You wake up one day and you go, what's going on? And this is where a lot of people have a crisis point, where the things that they once valued have ceased to excite them. You're no longer excited by the wins. You're no longer excited by being the best or the fastest or the whateverness. You're not excited by competition. There's nothing wrong with competition. I think competition is very healthy, but it doesn't excite you and define you the way it once did. And then at the statesperson phase is where the business or the individual or the team member or the group or the team or the community starts to genuinely exist for the sake of others, starts to exist for the sake of meaningful contribution. Because the statesperson phase, as I share in the book, that's the doorway that opens into the meaning-driven world. So the first two stages that Jung talks about, the athlete and the warrior, what I call that, and this is moving away from Jung's work, but what I call that is the ambition-driven world. And the statesperson is the doorway, the beginning of the meaning-driven world. The ambition-driven world is where all the problems are. That's where all the anxiety is. It's where the depression is, because we've outsourced our power to something external to us. The results that we're getting, other people's opinions, comparison game, and on it goes from there. So it's a very egocentric, it is an egocentric existence. And then the third phase is getting into this meaning-driven world, which is more heart-centric. It's based more in love. It's based more in collaboration, connection, kindness. It's just different. And then eventually we get to the fourth phase, which is the phase of spirit. Now I've described this in a way, Kevin, that seems like it's linear, like 1, 2, 3, 4, step one. It's not like that. We're moving up and down all the time. Because, for example, in a business, you could be at statesperson phase but you're starting to lose money. So you have to go back to the warrior phase to rebuild something or to change something, or you might have to go back to athlete because you might need a new team, or you might need a new system or a new update, or something's going to change on a fundamental material level. Then the results start to catch up, and then you can focus again on giving. So, and we're moving like this all the time in our lives, in our marriages, in our skill sets, everywhere. And eventually everything, all roads lead to bloody Rome. And Rome is the soul, is the spirit. It's the thing that's beyond description, that is indescribable, ineffable. It's a complete mystery. It really is. And that's what's so exciting about the spirit. It's so mysterious.
So fascinating. You've given us so much. Let me do a quick recap, because what you shared is a pathway from ambition to meaning. And I want to pick up just in a second. You alluded to the external versus the internal. I think that's so important. But just these 4 phases then. Athlete, where you're redefined by, what do you think of me? Number 2, then warrior type is, hey, well, what can I get? I'm building. Number 3 is statesperson.
To summarize it for you, Kevin, the first phase is where we're defined by other people's opinions. The second phase is where we're defined by the results, but we don't know how good those results are. The only way we're going to know if they're good or bad, because the ambition-driven world is very dichotomous. It's black, white, good, bad, high, low, fast, slow, first, last. The ambition-driven world, the way we know whether we're doing good is in comparison to other people in our market, or comparing how are my kids going? How's my family going in comparison to the family down the road over there? How's my house in comparison to other people who are got money around here? It's all that kind of stuff. And we know that by the time you get to 40, 45, you're sick of playing that game.
Yeah. And that's when people begin to feel tired, burnt out, stressed. And so, and then that's the point where you're saying people, if they go through this process, they can flip to meaning focus then, which is more focused on making a meaningful contribution and what can I give? And then you say at some point, we can step into this spirit archetype then, which is a little bit beyond description. Tell us more about that, because almost I see that you go through those phases to come to spirit, but essentially you were spirit in the first place.
100%. That's a great point. Great question. Great point you're making. So spirit really, even though I've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's just a way for me to explain it. Spirit actually sits in the background to the whole bloody thing. Yeah. It sits in the backdrop. So in other words, nothing can exist without the essence of the soul, the spirit, the consciousness, the universal intelligence, God. It's got so many names. And because the universal intelligence that's looking through, like I love this. One of my favorite Wayne Dyer quotes was, and I'm going to ad lib to it, where he said something like, the universal intelligence that is looking through your eyes is identical to the universal intelligence that opens a rose.
Okay.
There is only one universal intelligence, and it's responsible for everything. And we come along in the ego mechanism, and we're along for the ride. There's so many layers and so much more to what I'm saying. I'm aware of the time. So the spirit phase really sits in the background. It's conscious awareness. It's like, really, if you think about it, Kevin, what is it that's actually looking through your eyes? Oh, it's me. It's Kevin Bees. Oh, it's me. It's Joe Pane. It's like, well, not really. That's just a label for the body and the physical vessel that we have. But what actually is it that is looking through your eyes and my eyes as we connect here on the screen, or with our listeners and our watchers? We don't know. It's a mystery. As soon as you try to label it, you've got it wrong, because it's kind of like this. It's kind of like the lion in the forest looking for a whale. You ain't going to find it. The whale exists in a completely different world. Spirit is here. It's invisible, ineffable, indescribable, and deeply mysterious. Whether we believe it or whether we don't, spirit is a cosmic joke. Like, our belief system is handy, useful, pragmatic in navigating life and its responsibility, paying bills, looking after the business, all that. It's very, very good for that. But really beyond that is where reality sort of begins, if that makes kind of sense. This is like Ram Dass used to say, this is an aspect of reality, a physical world. So for me, and the reason why this is important, encouraged to be used, and the reason why this is an important conversation when it comes to emotional fitness, is that one of the 5 core focus areas of emotional fitness is perspective. Identity is one, perspective is another. And for me personally, staying in touch with spirit by reading, stories of mystics, reading about, deep near-death experiences from others, being divinely curious about what is breathing all this alive, knowing that there's so much more. I'll tell you this, Kevin, this is what's given me incredible peace and just resets my perspective instantly. A portion of my library is dedicated to near-death experience research. I've got heaps of books on it. I've read a lot about it and all that sort of stuff. That's why it's a mystery. I know nothing about it other than what I've read. But one thing I've noticed is that there are themes that carry through all of these near-death experiences. We're talking, tens of thousands of near-death experience cases. And there are certain themes, there are many themes that seem to carry through 90% of them. I'll say 100%, but we'll say 90%. And one of those themes is where the person, because a near-death experience is where someone's cardiovascular and brain system have actually shut down, where they actually have physically stopped breathing and stopped functioning. And they're out of it for 10 or 15 minutes, and somehow they get revived. And fortunately for that particular person, well, in a lot of cases, they have to rehab their bodies back into full functionality because of the damage that's done, but they get back to climbing on top of the metaphorical horse and they keep living. One of the things that so near-death experiences when they come back to consciousness with a conscious living memory of what they experienced on the other side. Although as life progresses, it begins to fade, but they remember these things. One of the themes that I find incredibly mind-blowing is where a person realizes that they say, look, I don't want to leave my son or my daughter or my wife or my best mate, the people that I would die for and care for and love unconditionally. I can't leave them. I don't want to leave them. Like if you're about to die, it's like, I know that if I was about to die, my fear would be, am I ever going to see my sons again? Am I ever going to see my wife again? Am I ever going to see my best mate again and all these other people? But what the near-death experience cases show is that everyone that's come back has said that when they're on the other side, they distinctly remember the indescribable, unconditional, divine love that they experienced on the other side. They had zero interest in coming back to their son, their daughter, their wife, their husband, their best mate, the person that they would die for. They had, Kevin, zero motivation or interest in coming back. So if you can look at the person that you would die for and care for the most and you love incredibly, that you would do anything for, you wouldn't come back to that because the other side's that good? I mean, my God. So that tells me that this is just the beginning. Like what's on the other side of the veil is something that is better than that. That's the mystery. And that's what we're all, I'll say that's what I'm returning to. I think we're all returning there, regardless of belief systems, etc. So the spirit archetype to me is in the book because for me personally, it helps me keep a perspective that is very clean and healthy. So when I get caught up in the dramas of life, business doesn't come your way. A loss happens, a frustration with, I don't know, the car or some bullshit like that. It's like, you get caught up, sure, get caught up in it. But then it's easy to get out of because you remind yourself of these other mysteries that makes all of this really completely and utterly laughable. I hope I'm making some kind of sense there, Kevin.
Want to know exactly where your business is leaking profit? Take my free profit scorecard. It's a quick and simple tool that will help you identify hidden gaps and opportunities to maximize your bottom line in just a few minutes. Visit www.profit.gifts and get your personalized results today. Now, back to the show. Yes, you are. I feel less concerned about dying now. You've painted a good picture for me, so that's a very good thing.
It's amazing. It is that is my. I read a book by a lady called Betty Eadie. She released this book back in the early 90s on her near-death experience journey. Her book sold like 13.5 million copies, and it's a phenomenal story that just encapsulates so many of the other near-death experience case studies that I've read and studied over the last 10, 15 years. So there's that. The other thing, I'll go share with you another theme, Kevin. The other theme that you need to remember for the rest of your life, and I'll speak to myself as well, saying the same thing, is that there's also a consistency where they come back to life and they realize that all of the things that you've done, the ambitions that you've succeeded at, the awards, rewards, things that you've achieved, none of that is even noticed on the other side. It's not even part of the conversation. It's not even part of the awareness. It's not even part of the consciousness itself. There's a particular case study where this woman ran a cancer center for the bulk of her life. For the majority of her adult life, she created this non-for-profit cancer center looking after people who, it's kind of like a very nice sort of palliative care kind of place. And she had a near-death experience. And on the other side, she had this conversation with the universal intelligence or whatever, God, Jesus, whatever you want, depending on your beliefs. She got asked two questions. And eventually she was told, you need to go back into your body, back into your life, so you can answer these questions in physical reality. Because when she was told these two questions, or asked these two questions, she was in complete denial. She said, what do you mean? I've been giving myself to these people who are sick, coming to the end of their life. I've been doing all these things. I'm a good person, And there's no doubt that she was a good person, like most of us are. But the question, there's two questions. The first question was, how well have you loved? And the second question was, how well have you allowed yourself to be loved? How well have you allowed, how easy have you made it for others to love you? And how well have you loved everything, everyone around you, the people that you care about, sure. But, and she was a person who was on the outside living a very contribution-based lifestyle, but she wasn't allowing love in. Mm-hmm. And which, if you're not allowing love in, it means you're not really loving as well as you can. Mm-hmm. So all of these books, near-death experience case studies, say that that's all that matters. We've heard the Beatles sing about it from the 60s. It's been around. It's a cliche now that love is all there is. But we tend to just brush it aside because it's so cliche. But the reason why it's cliche is because it's true. So these are two things, Kevin, that give me incredible peace. Is how well am I loving? How well am I letting love in? And a reminder that no matter how precious, no matter how vulnerable and scary it is to lose a son or a daughter or a partner, is that it's so indescribable on the other side, is that there is nothing in your consciousness, zero in your wantingness to come back to the person that you love. That's how good it is on the other side. And there was another case study I read which said, I hope this is appropriate. You can edit this out if you need to, Kevin. That's all good. One other case study said, this fellow said, picture the peak of the most intense orgasm you've ever had, and then stay there and 100x it. That's what it's like on the other side. It's beyond description. So that's what we're going back to. So what's the problem? What's your problem? What's my problem? Yeah. So I hope this helps you listeners, because there's a whole piece on that and spirit in the book. Mm.
The book's great, and you really made a really interesting point. And what comes up for me, I think of the book Power versus Force. And
David
he talks about there, like the emotional guidance scale, and what's sat at the very top of that is love, right? That's the highest frequency. I mean, there's joy, empowerment, freedom, appreciation, but love is wrapped up in that.
Well, actually, what sits on his top of his scale is beyond that. So at 540, which is really high, 540, 560, according to his scale, or his logarithmic scale, is unconditional love. But what sits at 1,000 is Christ consciousness, which is beyond love. It is beyond. Yeah. This is the world we're talking about on the other side. It's it's genuine, fair dinkum enlightenment. Yeah, so which our bodies aren't designed to handle.
From a business owner's perspective, then, how do we embody this? We're saying, hey, look, two meaningful questions there. How have we loved, and how well have you allowed yourself to be loved? If we actually put more focus onto that this day, this week, this month, this year, how will that change what's happening in our lives and our business?
Massively. This is a great question. When it comes to business, with this conversation, how it can help us in business is that you can become more aware of how much care are you demonstrating to your clients, your customers, the people you're dealing with. How much care factor is there for real? How are you demonstrating that kindness and care for whoever's experiencing your client, customer, your avatar is experiencing your business, or your service or your product? What about if you're leading a team? Do you genuinely care for them as people? And this is the thing, is that when we look at the spirit archetype and we translate that, as much as, it's a foreign thing, to business, it's like, do you care about people because of the fact that they're making you money? Or do you care about them as people? Do you care about them because of the role they play in your business? Or do you care about them because you actually care for them as people? Do you care for your customer or client because this person pays you $5,000 a month? Or do you care about them because you actually care about them as people? This is a fundamental question that takes radical honesty to answer. That's really important. And I think that, and when you bring that love, that kindness, that patience, that compassion, that empathy into your experience of others, you navigate the uncertainty of business in a completely different way. And the other thing is also, just like David Hawkins talks about in his books, and what I found in life is that, and what scientists have proven for decades is, this thing called energy. I mean, everything is energy. And when energy moves, it's called a vibration. And how fast something vibrates is referred to as a frequency. Then that frequency will resonate with other frequencies. So if you want to attract into your business people you can trust, people that you love, people that you care for, people that you enjoy being with, you've got to be all of those things in advance. You can't be a dick and expect to attract high quality people. If you're a dick, you're tuned into Dickhead FM, you're going to get all the Dickhead FM music. Whereas if you are a loving, kind, patient, where you've got a fair bit of your vibe focusing on them rather than focusing on yourself, you're going to attract those kinds of people. Like with my client base over the years, most of it's been done on a handshake. Some of it hasn't because the other person has asked that we do paperwork, sure, but most of it's done on a handshake because, and in 20 years or nearly 19 and a half years and nearly 20 years of being in business full time in training and coaching, I can't even think. Maybe there might be one, maybe two cases of where I was taken advantage of, but really, what's that in 2 decades? So look, that's my philosophy, and that just seems to work for me. And I wrote the book because I wanted to express it in language and in framework so it can help other people. Yeah.
I love it. There's a lot of power in that. And often when I'm in these conversations, I think about what's the title of the show going to be. And I think I've got it, Stop Being a Dick. I think it's going to be a real powerful title for people to realize, have the courage to be you. Instead, tune into Love FM. Love FM is where it's going to be, where the, you have the energy that's going to attract the people to you that you really want. And so if you having people in your team or your organization now and they're not behaving or not showing up in the way that you want, I think, Joe, your message there is that, hey, well, let's check in with how you're showing up, check in with your energy. What can we do there? Now, Joe, I want to be mindful that you have really delved into one of the 5 principles very well here. I mean, in your book, you talk about there being 5 different phases. Identity, you spent a lot of time with us on. I wonder if you're happy to share briefly the other key principles.
Sure. So these are in order of poundage or in order of impact. So the top one is identity, as we've discussed briefly here. The second one is life stages. So understanding where you're at on the journey from ambition to meaning, which we've touched on briefly here. The ambition to meaning journey, and then integrating ambition into meaning. So the businesses then and career paths that have sustained success have successfully integrated ambition into meaning. So they're genuine contributors to community or to society or to their market. They're adding genuine value and they're making lots of money. So it's the meaning-driven world is about making money in a meaningful way versus the ambition-driven world, which is making money for money's sake or making money for other motivations. So the emotional fitness formula, the first part is identity with all of its wonderful stages, and there's many layers to that. The second part of the emotional fitness formula is life stages, so the journey of ambition to meaning, and there's a whole description of how that works. The third is our values. So understanding. So in emotional fitness, I describe or define a value as our emotional compass. And values are misunderstood. Most people don't know their values because they don't know what a value actually is. I'm aware of how that sounds, but I say that from a place of certainty because I've seen this happen in so many, with all the workshops over the years. It's like I've seen this happen a lot. So a value, just very quickly, a value is a verb. It's not a noun. A value is something you actually perform. It's what you do. It's like if I walk into an organization and they say that creativity is one of our values, my first question is, well, how do you do that? What's the verb? What's the action? What's the thing? And in most cases, I don't know. It's just that's what we are. It's like, well, no, if you don't know how to do it, then you can't live it. In the book, I talk about the importance of finding activities that sing to your soul, that are expressions of your values. So a value is something that you actually perform. It's an activity. The fourth part of the emotional fitness formula is emotional flexibility. This is realizing that emotions don't respond to facts. Emotions only respond to the meaning that we're given the facts. And we are in total control of the meaning and interpretation that we're giving things, which in turn creates the emotional experience. And there's a whole bit on that. And the fifth part is perspective, as we've touched on here as well.
I love that. Very clear. And check out the book Courage to Be You then, and you can understand all of these 5 in more detail. Now, Joe, I appreciate I've got to get you off to the rest of your day, but you've shared so much value and so much wisdom. We do have one final question. We say on the podcast here that the quality of the questions we ask ourselves impacts the quality of the life that we lead. With that being true, what's one question you've asked that's had the biggest positive impact on your life, or a question you asked your clients that's had the biggest positive impact on their life?
Well, that question's changed and evolved over the last many, many years, as you can imagine. Right now, in 2025, as the time of this recording, I think it's the single most important question we could all ask ourselves. Am I nudging myself toward becoming an unconditionally loving being, or am I nudging myself more back toward fear? Is how I'm responding to this person, how I'm reacting to this problem, how I'm handling that challenge. Am I becoming the sort of person that is nudging me toward love or nudging me more back toward fear? That's the question.
Very powerful question. When you've asked that yourself, how's that impacted you? What's that shifted and changed for you?
It's created a lot of giggle because you get to learn how to laugh at yourself in a very healthy way. When, you watch a reaction to something and then you laugh afterwards, realizing how ridiculous we all can be. And giggle is an expression of love.
Okay. I love that. And maybe that's why it's so fun being around the kids, because they giggle a lot. There's always a lot of fun and laughter
Absolutely.
with them. Okay, wonderful. So, hey, wherever you're listening, make sure you're asking the question, are you nudging yourself towards unconditionally being loving, or are you nudging yourself towards fear? And I guess if it's the latter, then it's time to giggle, shift your perspective, change. And let's think back in relation to these 4 archetypes. Are you currently at your phase in the space of athlete, warrior, statesperson, or spirit? And Joe, I think I really take away from the call this insight around spirit and what could be beyond where we're at right now. And if we can bring some component of that experience, that spirit experience to life now and bring that loving, then of course it's going to make everything better in our life the whole way around. So I think for me to go away and embody that love and be, up that emotional spiral sounds really powerful. Now, if anyone's listening and wanted to get in contact with you, where's the best place for them to come find you?
The handle for LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, obviously, is at Joe Pane Insights. And if people go to just my name, joepane.com.au, link into the podcast. These podcast episodes it's called Insights. You can link into it, as I said, through Spotify or any of those. But if you go to joepane.com.au, you can see the podcast link there. And it's a series of just 20-minute insights into the human condition, this kind of conversation. So if this conversation has resonated with you genuinely, then you'd love the 20-minute little insights I have on different aspects of life using emotional fitness principles. And the most recent episode only just came out, the other week. So there's one coming out every couple of weeks. And it's called Insights with Joe Pane. And if you just go to the website there, you'll find it.
Amazing. Wherever you are listening, click into the show notes. There's a clickable link there to Joe's website, his book, and of course the podcast as well. Joe, I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what you can share with us. So I'm definitely looking forward to jumping into your podcast and learning more. Do you have any final messages that you'd like to share?
Be more curious about the character that you're becoming than the role that you're playing. So many people define themselves by the roles they have in life. Stop defining yourself by the roles you have in life and define yourself by who you want to become. What's the character? Who you want to become? And by character, I'm not talking a character. I'm talking about your character as a human being. Get curious about that. I think that'll help a lot of people.
What a powerful way to end the show. Joe, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Leading to Profit. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps us to reach more leaders like you who are committed to maximizing their positive impact and profitability. Until next time, this is Kevin Bees, and remember, you stop leaking profit when you're engaged in leading to profit.